want to say thank you all for joining us tonight for Exploring Career Paths, What I Wish I Knew, which is the second event for the first ever Imagine 2021 program sponsored by the President's Office, Career Services, and the Oswego Alumni Association. To start off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jessica Burnett, some people call me Jessie, and I am a junior studying public relations and minoring in business administration. I'm here to co-facilitate the panel today with Tycho Kelly, who is one of the career coaches here at Oswego. Some of the things I'm involved in on campus are Delsart Dance Club, PRSSA, and FANS. So with Delsart Dance Club, I choreograph dances. I'm also in the end of the semester recitals, which is really fun. For FANS, I'm an intern there for public relations. That's the Future Alumni Network, and I work in the alumni office. It's really fun as well. PRSSA is the Public Relations Student Society of America, and that just helps me in my public relations major. So that's really fun too. My dream when I get out of college is to do some type of public relations work for Walt Disney World because it's like my dream job. But before I do that, I want to definitely work for a PR agency in the city because it's also another dream of mine. And with all of the Imagine 2021 sessions that we have, I feel like the one that would benefit me the most is the first session that's taking place during week 2, which is actually another panel discussion that's called What Employers Really Want in New Hires, because I'm a junior and I'm about to graduate in a year, which is kind of scary because I feel like I was a freshman just yesterday. But I feel like it will definitely benefit a lot of students, and not even just like juniors, but like anyone in general. It's probably like the best one, in my opinion, one of the best ones. So regarding the program, this is the first week of a 5-week program focused on giving students in the class of 2020 the chance to explore career paths, find job and internship opportunities, network with alumni, and so much more. You can check out the website for more details. The link is actually in the chat. If it's not, we're going to put it in the chat for you guys to look at. And also, if you complete 3 items on the weekly checklist, you'll be eligible for a drawing at the end of the week, which is really cool too. So the direct link for that checklist is also located in the chat. And now, without further ado, I am excited to tell you about our panel of amazing alumni. So first is Justin Brantley. He is the class of 2015 public accounting graduate. Sushmita Lamb is the class of 2019 computer science and mathematics minor graduate. Darlene Lee is the class of 2016 business administration graduate. And David Owens is the class of 2015 Bachelor of Fine Art with an illustration concentration graduate. So now we're going to jump to the panel questions to get started. So in order of who I just told you with the alumni, we're going to do that. So the first question is to please restate your name, your current position, and share the most energizing part of the work you do, starting with Justin.
Definitely. So good afternoon and good evening, everybody. It's definitely an honor, and I appreciate being able to sit and talk with you all during what's really been a turbulent time. So again, my name is Justin Brantley. I'm a senior financial service auditor with EisnerAmper. So I graduated SUNY Oswego in 2015, and I came back for my 5-year program, to finish my 5-year program, excuse me. So I also got my MBA from the university. So I spent a couple of long winters in Oswego. But as far as what brings me energy as I work, it has to be the human interaction, to be honest. As an accountant, it's weird. It's not super creative work that we're doing, but my firm does a really good job with happy hours, Super Bowl parties, like we celebrate everyone's birthdays. We have team lunches and stuff like that. So really being able to find an organization where you can see yourself working 8, 10, 12 hours a day without that gnawing feeling of, oh, I want to go home, or, oh, this is tiring, or anything like that. But besides that, I know I'm going to sound like a little bit of a nerd, but for anyone who's taken Professor Pagano's accounting to a one class, or is any type of math student, when you get an equation to net to zero or to finally solve out, like that 1 second of, oh my God, like the puzzle is complete. That's kind of what gets exciting for me. For the most part, as an accountant, it's a lot of referencing like bank statements and verifying what the client is telling you that they have in their accounts is true. So it's a lot of emails and third-party conversations. So actually getting to the nitty-gritty of the math and the calculations is like the fun work and not the busy work for me. So
Thanks. Sushmita, if you want to go next.
So I'm Sushmita Lamb. I go by Sushi. While I was at Oswego, I was Sushmita Banerjee. Right after graduating, I would say a year in, I got married. So that's why the name change. And my current position is a systems engineer with Siemens. I work in the New Orleans office, or work quote unquote because we're working from home because of COVID. So I work from there. So I moved from very, very sunny Oswego to a very, very cold Louisiana. That's a sarcastic remark right there. But the most energizing part about my job, I would be, is that every time I pass by a building, a significant one in the greater New Orleans area, I could very proudly say that I worked in that building. So everything from that building's air conditioning to the heating to the water piping, everything is designed by my team. So we work primarily in the state of Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, like the Southeast region, basically. So I work in the engineering team for that. So even though I don't get to visit a lot of the other states, but with Louisiana, Louisiana State University, the New Orleans Saints Superdome, these are some of the big projects that I've worked on. So it's definitely every time you drive by, it's significant and a joyous moment to be able to say, oh yeah, I put in work towards that massive structure right there. Yep.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And then Darlene.
Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be here, to be able to be on the panel with the other alumni and to be able to connect with some students. So again, my name is Darlene and I currently work at Harvard Business School in the Division of Research and Faculty Development. So I work mainly with faculty, so I'm on a teaching delivery team and my team specifically works with finance professors. So we are responsible for all of the prep work and everything that goes on behind the scenes to help faculty prep for classes that they teach. And one of the things that is really exciting about my role is I get to work and do all of the behind the scenes things to prep for those classes. But then once the first week of school kicks back in, being able to reconnect with students and to be able to see how the work that my team does in all of the teaching delivery to be able to impact student learning is really fulfilling. And I think especially right now with the pandemic, having to shift all of our teaching and all of our models to an online platform and being on that team to be able to do that is really exciting. And working with faculty right now to pilot a lot of our hybrid models and hybrid classrooms. So we have no idea how long this is going to last for, but we definitely think that the technology that we are piloting and working with now will be part of future learning at Harvard Business School. So everything is just kind of up in the air right now, but being able to kind of be on that creative team has been really exciting.
That's awesome. And then lastly, David.
David, you just have to unmute yourself.
Leave it to the art major to make a mistake like that. Yeah, I was a graphic design concentrate in illustration well, at Oswego, and now I do two things. I'm an art director for Oswego County Tourism. So I stayed local, and I also have a company that does freelance work. I work with a lot of universities. In fact, actually I do a decent amount of work for Oswego, Syracuse University, University of Rochester. So we do mainly like publication design and things like that. And that's going well. That's probably my real interest right now. And the energizing thing is just to be able to, put into practice a lot of these foundational art things that we learned. To be able to work in the creative sphere is a privilege for me, and just, having gone through classes about color theory and intro to design and things like that, and then getting into the real world and actually seeing how those things are not just applicable, but they're like sought after skills. And so that's, for me, is the interesting part, is to be able to do creative work.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So now it's the next question. So starting with Justin again, can you tell us where your head was at with your career when you were in college, and how did you eventually find your fit?
So when I spoke to Takeo about this panel, she told me to be completely honest and to just tell the truth. So I will say that while I was at school, I was so focused on the present and what was going on the day-to-day that it wasn't like I had a 5 or 10 year goal sheet or plan. I really knew that. So I'm from Orange County, New York, which is about an hour from the city. And my goal was, okay, I need to find a job that's going to get my foot in the door, so that I can afford to live in New York City and not have to go back and forth and commute. But for me, I knew once I got my bachelor's and finished my master's program that the sky was the limit, and that my network would hopefully bridge the gap. I think 4 or 5 years later now, I think it held. One of the big things I wanted to be able to do was to start a job and start a career where I knew I could stay for 3, 4 to 5 years, to have a solid foundation, so that when I moved on to the next opportunity, whatever that may be, I was able to show longevity and show trust, I guess, with any given company. So that was something that was always in the back of my mind. It wasn't necessarily, okay, at 25, I want to do this, and at 27, I want to be here. At 30, I want to have a house in the Hamptons. Like, there wasn't a set guideline, but just probably junior year is when everything kind of started falling into place. And I kind of wing it, to be honest, but I'm very glad with the decisions I did make. And maybe having a plan would have changed some things, but I think every student has to understand that their path and their experience are going to be different during their 4-year, 5-year journey. So I'll say that.
It's actually funny that you say you're from Orange County, because I am too. So that's funny. Let's see. Next is Sushi.
All right. Let's see. So I would say the main thing is being an international student. I came to America in 2015, August. And from then on, like, you have to figure out your whole life situation of where you're at, coming from a different background, a different culture, the food changes, the people changes, how you interact with people changes. So the essence of who you are, excuse me, has to kind of adapt and change over time. So when I came to the US, I did have a 5-year, I would say, either 5-year or 4-year plan. Like, I had a goal as to where I wanted to be after my college education was over. And so I took active steps while I was still at college in order to attain those goals. So I would say the main goal was I wanted to stay here for as long as I could recover every penny I had put into college by working a job. So I was paying for college all by myself. My dad or mom or anyone, no one helped with that. So I think right when I got to Oswego, I applied for like on-campus jobs, and the first ones you get are like at the dining center. So I worked at Lakeside for a while, and stuff like that progressed. And then while working with the professors and I think career services, I was able to, in my sophomore year, get a co-op in Boston. And that was very beneficial because at a very early stage in my college career, I was able to attain a lot of actual real world business information and experience, and also like programming and learning where your heart is at, because with programming you can go with such a broad um, entryway. It's very easy to get lost in what exactly you want to do. So through that job, I was able to narrow it down that I wanted to work with front end development, which is basically like the what you see on a website, the overlay, the front view of it, the interface of how someone would react to it is what I fell in love with, rather than the back end of how data is stored or some stuff like that. So I felt like it would allow me to have a good sort of interaction with actual real human beings rather than being stuck in a room and coding away. So that really helped. And then eventually that job led me to, right after college, led me to the company calling me back. So I went back to Boston and worked for that company for 8 months before my now husband decided that he didn't decide, but he was stationed in Louisiana. So I decided that I wanted to move from Boston, but having the background in computer science, it was very easy for me to kind of adapt and shift my career. So even though in Boston I was working as a developer, I was able to kind of transition and use the same kind of logical and practical thinking and apply it to my job interview for my current Siemens job. So even though I'm not programming on an everyday basis, which my degree is in, I'm still designing and still implementing the same sort of like concepts that we learned in class in terms of overall how a business model and business structure goes. So definitely I would say I'm able to now look back and see that even though I planned for something, it didn't end up happening that way. Like I didn't stay in computing, but it's still my plan kind of fit into the flexibility of how life just sometimes ends up happening.
Nice. And then Darlene.
So for me, I felt like I really didn't know what I wanted to do, or really not really sure what I wanted career goal wise. So I started off at community college. I did 2 years at home, and then I transferred to Oswego. And then once I got there, I was in my second semester, sophomore year, going into my junior year. And I felt like when you're at your junior year, you kind of have this panic of, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like you kind of get to that point, like I feel like I should know what I'm doing now, but I have no clue, and I'm so close to graduation. So what do I do? But thankfully at that time, I ended up getting an internship with the Compass at Career Services. So this is a plug to Gary, Christine, Jackie, who are on this call right now. But with their help and their mentorship, it really helped me. And through that internship, I felt like I really was able to explore and do a little bit of self-reflection, like what is it that I really enjoy? What do I really find that is fulfilling? And it was through that experience that I knew that I really enjoyed working with students. I loved being able to work on a college campus and being able to have that interaction every single day with students and helping them with their college experience. So it was from that internship experience, their mentorship, that after graduation, I went to Syracuse University and I did my master's in higher education. And then from there, being able to go and also have more internship experiences through my program led me to know that I wanted to stick with whatever functional area that I am working in higher ed at the moment. So I definitely think that for those of you who may feel like you're in a similar situation, not knowing what you want to do or what goals you should have, I think being able to not be afraid to reach out to the professional staff who are on campus, who are there for you, having their guidance and just be able to talk to them is super helpful. And then from there, you can really figure out your goals, whether it's just short-term, long-term, whatever it may be.
Nice. These are all like such great answers. I just wanted to put that out there. And yeah, feel free also if anyone has any questions, like any attendees, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will get to them as well. For now, we will go on to David for question 2.
You have to unmute yourself, David.
I'll get it on the last question. I had looking back, it's only been like 5 years since I graduated. It feels like, I don't know, 15 years at least. But for me, when I was a student, I was, the art and design program at Oswego are very much interconnected. And that's one of the things I really liked about Oswego when I toured it as a high school student. And so when I first went in, I thought I would be in design and my whole goal was to go into advertising. And I wanted to work on advertising campaigns, basically develop the visuals, art direct or design, that sort of thing. And then it was, I guess, my junior year, just like Darlene or someone else mentioned, when I started really falling in love with illustration. And it was kind of a weird moment because my parents were like, what is this illustration thing? It sounds so much less secure than advertising. And in some ways they're right, but senior year I started a small company and I was doing some freelance work and I got some like really cool illustration jobs on the side. And I started making like a lot of money. For a student, it was a lot of money, especially. But it was more than I could have made stepping right into advertising. So that was a really interesting experience, and it kind of like made me rethink what I was doing, because here was something I liked a lot more, and maybe it wasn't as secure, but the stakes were really high, and I felt like I could work really hard and I would get paid more money, and I just liked being able to have a job like that and also the freedom around it. So that's what I did. Right out of school, I started my own company and just started contract work, and things were going really, really well. And then at some point, I got married and I realized I wanted something a little more stable. And the irony of the whole thing is I took a job art directing in advertising, essentially. I'm kind of the client side of things, so I'm not working at an agency. So I do that now as my day job. And then in the evenings, I still do the illustration work. So.
Awesome.
All right, so for our next question, and we'll snake back around just so that David can have a chance to go first. Justin doesn't have to be on a hot seat first every time. Could you share, what do you think is the one main thing that you did or experienced or accomplished while you were in college that benefited your career most?
Yeah, so I'm starting, right? Okay. I had kind of two experiences that were related. When I was a student, I mentioned I was doing some freelance work, and one of the jobs I got almost, I guess it was right when I graduated, because I wasn't doing it as a student, but was I did some work for student affairs. So I ended up meeting the vice president of student affairs, and she found out I was a graphic design major and that I was graduating soon. And she said, Gerald Woolfolk was her name. So it's a new person now, but she said, hey, how would you like to design like an annual report for us for student affairs? And that was like exactly what I wanted to do. So it was kind of just serendipitous, I guess, right place, right time, that sort of a thing. But it was cool just that, she had confidence in me to kind of give this project to a student who was just graduating. And there was another project that was similar to that, kind of like, hey, you're graduating. As soon as you graduate, we've got some freelance work for you. So I thought that was, it was really kind of special. In some ways, it was kind of that confidence boost I think I needed at the time. Not only to have clients right out the gate as I was graduating, but a university, and the university that I went to that I understood the brand of. I understood what it was to be a student at Oswego, obviously. So I think that was probably the single, career-wise, that was the single biggest moment for me as a student.
Thank you. I'm Darlene.
So the one thing I felt like that really benefited me, like while I was at Oswego, that is helping my career now is networking. And I feel like that was a skill that I had really developed at Oswego. Prior to coming, I felt like I was really like shy, super introverted. And I felt like at that time, my time at Oswego was really a lot of personal growth for me as well. So it was getting out of my shell and just being able to go ahead and approach people, whether it was a classmate, whether it was a professional staff member on campus, whether it was anyone who maybe had suggested like, oh, hey, like, I think you should talk to this person, and, following through and reaching out to them. So it was informational interviews. It was people that, even though they may not have been in Oswego, it was a friend of a friend or a colleague or someone that they had referred me to, and being able to make those connections and build those relationships with people, but also being able to sustain those relationships as well. So following up, saying thank you, or maybe a year later, reconnecting with them. And I feel like because of the connections that I was able to build and my networking skills at that time, it really helped me in grad school. And then with my job searching as well, being able to reach out to those people that I connected with like 3-4 years ago prior at Oswego, like, hey, like, I'm job searching right now. I'm looking in this city, this area, this functional area within higher ed. Maybe can you spare some time? So I think being able to sustain and reach out and connect to those people is something that is super helpful.
Thank you, Darlene. And yeah, pro tip, everyone. So you came to this webinar, awesome job for doing that. And now after, go add these awesome folks that you got to hear from today on LinkedIn. Connect with them, add a note so that they know where you heard them, share a note of like what the most interesting thing that they shared that really stuck with you was, and then they'll be in your network, just like Darlene said. So thank you, Darlene. Sushi?
So I have a couple of things. I would first like to second what Darlene said was just having that knowledge of like how to approach someone and following through is 100% key, because no matter like where, in which aspect of life you do it, it's going to benefit you. It's never going to be harmful to like approach someone, and when they give you advice, follow through, or at least do your research with what they said, because it's going to be beneficial. Other than that, I also think being proactive is very important, rather than waiting for opportunities to come to you, or waiting for someone to reach out. You should try and take that step yourself. So like I said before, having to pay for college, every single job that I applied for, I knew that I had to go and do it and not wait for someone to be like, hey, I heard through the grapevine that job is available, do that. So seeking those opportunities out and taking them, and then putting your best foot forward would always be good. Let's see what else. And through that, I would say the same kind of like, I didn't wait for that job that I had my sophomore year to be like, someone to tell me that it's there. I went to career services. I seeked out if they had like opportunities in my field, and they had, and then that led to the like I said in the previous question, that led to me having that internship, then having a co-op with them, and then having that solid job right before I graduated. So I still remember in my last month before I graduated, I already had a job, whereas I saw a lot of people who were graduating with me might not have a job or a solid, what am I going to do next moment. And that really, like, I feel like that would scare me if I had that, because until the moment I got that job and that surety that I was gonna be in a different place and do something and be able to make money right after college, I was pretty scared. So having that sort of background, if you've set that level and that tone with a certain company or certain people, that helps you move forward in your career. And that's, I mean, I would say that's pretty much it, being proactive and seeking the opportunities out and then following through, like Darlene said.
Thank you, Sushi. And last but not least, Justin.
So I'm actually glad that we snaked and ended with me on this one, because my sentiment kind of ties in what all the other panelists said, with a little bit of a caveat. But getting involved, it was really like a domino effect for me. Like every opportunity that I said yes to grew my network and then opened doors to other opportunities. So as a freshman and sophomore, I was involved with the accounting club and the investment club for a little while. I joined the Black Student Union, BSU, but then as I was matriculating through my undergraduate degree, now I knew more people. So when someone needed someone to lead a march or to speak on behalf of the student body, or like my class or something like that, or connect them with Dr. Woolfolk, who David mentioned earlier, like I happened to be someone who was able to connect all those dots. And for me, that was, not only did it teach me humility and being able to connect with people and always be able to have a conversation regardless of who's in the room. It also taught me to do my own, to start my own things. So being able to say by junior, senior year, okay, now that I've held all these roles, BSU, student associations, investment club, I now want to create opportunities for other people. So from my senior year to my grad year, myself, Billy Keys out of Bio, and Shania Wilson, two other MBA graduates at the time, we started the National Association of Black Accountants. We chartered it at SUNY Oswego's campus, and with the thanks of Dean Skolnick, who was the dean of Rich Hall at the time, the School of Business. But that was a catalyst, starting an accounting organization on the campus. Hello, I mean that's what I led with most of my interviews. I was able to talk about how not only was being on an organization or being a part of something allowing me to be able to work with so many different personalities, but the cold calls, the emails, the redrafts, the conversations, the getting funding for the organization, the collaborating with other organizations, like being involved really changed my entire outlook on the possibilities. And I know not everyone is an extrovert. I know not everyone has 20 organizations that they're interested in joining, but you can start your own. And I know Mike Pistella, who runs student involvement, that's his coined phrase. Like you can, if there's an organization that you don't see on this list, go start your own. And I think with the resources that Oswego had, I think the sky was really the limit. So now looking back at that 5-6 years later, I still have that same network, the NABA, the New York NABA president, and the people who I had to email, like I said, constantly to get this chartering process underway. Those are some of my mentors now. And I see them when we go to holiday parties. Obviously now things are a little different, but trying to stay involved helps you with networking, helps you with creating new things, helps you with trying to find internships and jobs. So find something that whether it's aligned with your degree and your major, or just something that's a passion project, and try to do it with other people so that you can foster that skill. So that's it.
Can I second something that Justin said real quick? Is like he mentioned like having something to talk about in an interview and put on your resume. That is like the most important thing, because even though like you might not be doing something related to your field, like I was doing teaching at one point, you're able to talk about it. So even if they see you don't have the skill levels or the qualities they're requiring or requirements for that job, they might be able to section off into something else that you can talk more passionately about just because you've done it. And that just in their head, it's like, oh, this person may not know XYZ, but they do know ABC. So that in their head, or they're able to connect with you somehow, someone also taught for a little bit, and that connection in itself is good when you're able to make that with a random stranger who knows nothing about you other than just this piece of resume. So good job, Justin.
Those are such great points. Thank you. And yeah, please, panelists, like you can chime in like that. That was awesome. The extension of that. And one thing I just want to add, as Justin mentioned, the clubs and organizations like through Laker Life, and he mentioned Mike Pastella, who works in that office. One misconception that I hear a lot when I'm meeting with students for career coaching is that they think you can really only join clubs and orgs at the beginning of the semester. And I remember kind of thinking that as a student, at least socially in a way, like, oh, well, there's this group of people and they already have their thing going. It would be weird if I just showed up partway through. And I get that that can be a little uncomfortable, but as all the panelists are saying with how important that networking is and that human connection and expanding your horizons, seriously, go for it. Join in the middle of the semester. It's not weird at all. Seriously, clubs are always looking for more people. I can't stress that enough. So thank you. Great points. And I'll hand it back to Jesse for the next question.
Okay. So our next question is, has there ever been a time where you have to make a difficult decision or change along your path? And we'll start with Darlene this time.
I feel like one of the most difficult things was, I think, just figuring out what I wanted to do. In total, during my entire undergrad time, I think I changed my major 5 or 6 times. Like I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, what I was interested in. And I think just being able to finally connect like with a mentor and have mentorship, to be able to really sit down and do a lot of self-reflecting of what am I actually interested in? What are some things that I really want to learn more about? So that was one piece of it. Another piece of that entire decision-making process was, for me, I had a lot of family pressures at home as well, with a lot of my family wanting me to major in a specific field that I had no interest in whatsoever. And to be able to have that difficult conversation at the time, you know, when you're 18, 19 years old, telling your parents that you don't want to major or go to school or study what they think that you should be doing. So being able to have that conversation in general, I felt like was probably the most difficult thing for me. But once I was able to kind of talk through with someone, really figure out what I was even interested in, that was the biggest hurdle. And then from there, through my internship experiences, led me to grad school, led me to my current job today. So end of the day, just remember that the things that you're doing, remember to fulfill them for yourself and whatever your enjoyment is, rather than doing something just because someone else thinks that you should be doing it.
I also want to add that I've changed my major like a million times before I figured out I love public relations. So I completely agree with that. And I'm sure a lot of people can too. So next up, we're going to go to David.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the exact same thing. Pretty much as Darlene just said. It was kind of, for me, it was, I didn't have pressure to do something specific, but I felt like what I had decided to do and what I kind of talked about, like it was built into like my elevator speech, like everyone asks you what your major is and that sort of thing throughout your college career. And I had wanted to go in advertising, and then to switch to something that was illustration that was so much yeah, it was less secure. People then a lot of times people, oh, what are you gonna do with that? Or something like that. But the thing is, I really think that if you really, really enjoy something, not just like a little bit, but if you really enjoy something and you're willing to get really good at it, you're gonna find work with it. no matter what. So that's kind of my advice, I guess. And I think that also answers Caitlin Goodwin's question here on the chat too. You know, to have an industry, to have something like a subject matter that you want to be really good at, I think as an undergrad, that's okay to just kind of put your head down, learn everything you can about this subject for a few years, and then as long as at the same time you're meeting people along the way and learning about other opportunities, because a good chance are that you'll end up in a job after you graduate in a field or a position, a title that you probably didn't even know existed your freshman year. That's probably going to happen, and that's okay. But creating, you know, using those difficult decisions to go back to what your actual interests are, to like reaffirm and say like, okay, this is the reason I'm doing this is because I really, really want to end up doing this thing. For me, it was working with design. Um, and just to be willing to do that, at the end of the day, if you're working hard and meeting people, I think, and if you're good at what you do, you can create your own opportunities. So sometimes we're so concerned about like finding the opportunity when it's like you can make your own job up if you want.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Justin.
So I think that was a great place to leave off from David. It sounds cliche when we say, oh, there may be a job that you don't even know exists, but it's 2021 and we're doing things so differently now. Who knows who can say what we'll be doing in 2022 and 2023 and so on and so forth, which ironically goes into my answer that right now, like this is the difficult decision that I'm faced with, of now working from home during a pandemic. Okay, I can now fine tune some of my skills that maybe I haven't touched on since I was in college. Maybe I can reach back and say, okay, and I hope no one tells my my manager or my company this, but like thinking of what that transition looks like. Okay, maybe do I want to move home and save money, or do I want to follow my passion, or do I want to try to get a job that pays me more money? Like the difficult time of saying, okay, like for some folks who might have changed their majors a couple of times. I know I almost changed my major in the middle of a test that I surely did not get a good mark on. But when you were making that decision of picking your major, like it's that same difficult life-changing decision of, okay, if I step in this direction, is it going to now cause ripple effects that I'll never be able to come back from? But what I've learned now, being out of school for again 4 or 5 years, and I'm very close with a lot of my friends who I went to Oswego with, is that you get to recreate yourself. There is no set plan that who you are today is going to indefinitely determine what happens in a couple years. So being able to hone on multiple skills is really what's, and not to contradict what David said, but if you find passion in something, put energy into it. If you find passion in multiple things, test it out a little bit. And I think that was part of a question that was asked in the chat. But I mean, it's a daunting decision on what happens next, and maybe you know right away, but it's okay if you don't. So for me, right now, I'm going through a difficult time of, okay, what's the best move? What is a 30-year-old Justin look like compared to a 27 and a 23-year-old Justin? So don't think that just because we have the Imagine 2021 backgrounds that we have it all figured out. We're also all actively figuring it out. So I'll leave you guys with that.
Thank you for that, Justin. And then last but not least for question 4, we have Sushi.
So I can think of two key things that happened, once during my college and once after I graduated, that were difficult decisions that took a lot of like thinking as to what I wanted to do and what was right for me, and all of those big major questions combined. I would say the first one was definitely my sophomore year, when I was when I was offered that job in Massachusetts. I knew I had to move my whole my everything that I had, which was basically at the time 2 suitcases, because you can't really move to a different country with all your life. You kind of start accumulating it over time. So I had to make that difficult decision and decide if I wanted to move or not, because I had just gotten into a relationship. My friends were my family, they still are. And in that time, I was like, I've already moved away from family. Am I willing to do that thing one more time? And in that moment, I will be missing out on parties. I will be missing out on hanging out with everyone. And even though it's not a big career decision in my head, it was more of an emotional thing where I knew that me moving was going to have an impact on some of these relationships that I really had cultivated and I felt proud of. Because other than just being proud of your career and how your life is going through college, you're also in those 4 years making some very serious relationships that these people are going to be, your kids godparents someday, or they're going to be you're starting a company with you, and all of those things are important. So in that time, I had to make that difficult decision of moving away for 6 months at a time, because I was tight on money. So I knew I had to pay for the rest of the, I guess, 2 years of college. So I knew that taking that semester off, I would have to um, take more credits right after I came back, because I wanted to still graduate on time. Because the more I would push my graduation date out, if by a semester, let's say, I would have to pay more money. Then it came to like these relationships. So that was a big decision where I had to be like, I do need to go away for 6 months. And I would try to come see you guys as much as I can. And I ended up seeing everyone once a month for 6 months. Over the weekend. So that worked out. But I would also say, like, having good friends who understand where you're coming from, what your background is, what your needs are, and support you 100% in all your decisions is what helped me make that difficult choice. And to kind of piggyback off of that, right after I graduated college, even though the company called me back, I had to quit that job after 8 months. Is even though they wanted to transition me from that co-op position into a full-time position, and it was a very good pay and it had benefits and had all these things, I had to decide to quit that job and move down south, even though I knew there was no big tech companies down here. So the job I was doing in Boston was my dream job, because I was enjoying it thoroughly. It was part of what I had learned in college, was directly applying to that job. Every day I hung out with people my age. So we had similar backgrounds in terms of like our thinking, our worldview, how we approach a problem, uh, joking around, being in a new city. All of those things had a big impact on my life. But at the same time, I knew that if I stayed there, I would be losing out on a different chunk of my life, which was with my now husband. So it was a give and take relationship. I knew I would be able to secure a job here in New Orleans because of my background, and I knew that if I just looked hard enough, I would find a job that would kind of tie it in together. And I was able to find this job through that. But at the same time, when you have to think of 9 other things that are going on that are amazing and exactly right and perfect, you have to be adaptable. So I would definitely think that through these 4 years, one of the key things I have learned, and I have learned to accept, that's just how it is being adaptable. If you are not adaptable right now, and flexible with where your life is taking you, you I think a person tends to get stuck in that thing, like, no, I want to do this and I will do this. But if you keep, like all of these people have said, if you keep working towards that one thing you really want to do, eventually, if you don't do it now, you will end up doing it in 3 years. You never know. Like after this, if I moved to a different state because of the military, I would be able to say, oh, I have this background with this amazing company, and I had learned nothing about HVAC systems or pumps. I didn't know there were different kinds of pumps that did different kinds of things, but now I can say that I did that. And that too with like a very reputable company. So when I take that into future jobs, even though I would be applying for a developer position, I still have my background in designing systems. Just like in college, I was a tutor for, I think, almost 4 years, the whole 4 years I was there. So I can be like, I can go to a school at some point and be like, hey, I have this background of teaching and I'm good at it. So, and these are the people X, Y, and Z who I can connect you with that will say I'm good at it. So trying out different things, but not getting stuck in that moment of like, this big decision feels like do or die, but once you cross that hurdle, after that you will still come out stronger and having a different sort of skill set, and you would be able to, I guess, add to your resume if you want to tie it in together, because your resume will over time keep growing and showing these different kinds of people you can be, because it's different hats that you're putting on your head. And right now I can be a systems engineer. In college I was a developer, and in the future I can be a teacher. You never know. But I feel like with difficult decisions, I think always comes a lesson. So when you take that as a lesson and moving forward, you prioritize in that moment what feels right to your head, to your heart, and you have a combination of those going forward. It'll always be a good thing.
Thank you so much, Sushi.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And so we have our last question tonight, and we do want to be mindful of all of your time. Thank you so much for giving us this time, and attendees as well. So with this one question, feel free to also answer the question that was put in the chat. I think 2 different people kind of asked about networking during COVID. So if you have anything to share on that, feel free to tie that in after this. So we'll start with Darlene again. If you could say, thinking back to when you were at Oswego, what's the one most important thing you wish you had known? If you could go back and tell your earlier self something, what would that be?
One thing I would definitely tell my earlier self is that what you major in does not define your career. Kind of touching on what Justin had answered in the previous question too. So never limit yourself and never doubt your ability of what you can do. For myself, I majored in business and now I work in higher education. I never would have thought myself as a junior, senior would have connected the two at all. And just remember that open yourself to other opportunities. You may be majoring in something and then something may come across that you are really super interested in and that you would want to explore more, and that may end up becoming your passion, or you may just explore something and maybe you don't like it, and that's totally fine. But never limit yourself or to just whatever you're majoring in. Just remember to open up that scope, because you never know what door can open.
Thank you, Darlene. And I'll just go across my line right to Justin.
Definitely. So I know there's about 21 panelists in here, 19 it looks like right now, or attendees, and maybe I'm talking to someone directly. Stop cutting corners. That's the one thing I would tell myself. I definitely, me and my friends were very fake it till you make it, and then you'll find out what happens when you do. And that mentality definitely catches up to you. So to Sushi's point, if I went through all of school and I didn't know how to balance a balance sheet or how to create financials, like all that time would have, now I'm behind the 8 ball. So being able to have time management and to research the things that you don't know is important, and using your resources. Those two or three things like still stand out to me to this day. In New York City, there's nowhere, literally nowhere, where I can go to the Bloomberg terminal, get my resume critiqued, get a cover letter edited from the writing center, be able to sit with Mr. Gary Morris and have him look through internships with me, play sports with my friends. Nowhere you can do all of that and then find your way at ring night in an hour. There's no way you can do that. So while and again, I know this is a virtual reality that we're all in, so maybe all those resources aren't necessarily handy. But when the time comes and when you hopefully return back to campus, and even now, I'm sure the resources are out there that you can still utilize. Take full advantage of it. You're paying for it. Like the tuition, the room and board, that all pays for it already. So you might as well get the most out of it. So I wish I told myself that in 2012, but here we are today.
Thank you, Justin. And Sushi?
I'd like to piggyback off of what Darlene said. My number one thing would be it's not set in stone. Because like I said, I came in with a 5-year plan of what I wanted to be, but over time I've seen it change and adapt and develop into something completely else. And if I didn't embrace that now and not freak out every time something changed from where I wanted it to be, I would not be where I am right now. So just knowing that, yes, you might change your major 5 times, and yes, you might feel the need to stay those extra 2 years to get a master's degree. And yes, you might pick up those extra jobs. Everything is going to help you in your process. And other than that, the other main thing would be to take a break sometimes, because I am a very go kind of person. I have always been and will probably always be. But in this past year, when I could never go to work and work at a physical office, and I basically joined the company and had to stay at home and work from home, realizing how important it is to take a break, even though I'm in my like home space and everything, it is a more relaxing environment, but knowing when to take like those 5-10 minutes off, or that 30-minute off, and making up that time later, because I know with a payroll you have to kind of work 8 hours and so on and so forth. But taking that break is very important for your mental health, especially during these times. And it also will make you more productive, because I know for the first time I was able to take paid time off during these past holidays. And after those 2 weeks, I feel like when I came in this Monday, I was like, good job, Sushi type person, rather than a laid back type person. So definitely take a break when you feel you need it, even if it is before an exam, because those few minutes and few hours you spend with your friends will re-energize you so you can tackle that problem in a better way.
Thank you, Sushi. And last but not least, David.
Thanks. Yeah, you guys are so smart. I'd repeat everything you said pretty much. But two other things that came to mind that I would definitely mention to myself, if I could go back, would be, one is don't limit yourself. Like, don't think that there's a cap on salary, or we've talked about creating your own experiences and things like that. So don't limit yourself by thinking like this is the thing that I have to do and that's the only thing. And I think with that too, I would say know that you're going to have to pay some dues. And that's not a negative thing, but because if you know that, then when you are paying the dues, it's not so hard, right? To know that the first year you start a company, you're not going to be making $200,000. The second year you're probably not either, but you can get there. You know what I mean? That's where the limit yourself. Don't limit yourself, but things take time. And so many students, you get out and it's like you want to do everything right away. You want to achieve everything you've ever thought, but your career is a long one in most cases. Sorry, my camera shut off. Can you still hear me though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. But yeah, I mean, those are the two things I think. Don't limit yourself as a student. Don't think that you have to do things a certain way, and then also know that whatever you do, it's going to take time and hard work to come to. Anything worth coming to is going to take hard work.
Thank you so much. These were all really great responses. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but if any of the attendees that attended today would like to ask their questions, you can add the panelists on LinkedIn and ask them there. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you so much for participating, and a huge thank you to all of our amazing alumni panelists. Your insight and perspectives were super interesting and very insightful. Also, a reminder that it is not too late to register for the Myers-Briggs Workshop tomorrow. Pre-registration is required no later than midnight tonight, and you will need to complete an assessment prior to the workshop. But check out the chat for the registration and links and details, and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you for coming.